Okay, so my name is Dr. Angela Crawley, and I work at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute, and I'm an associate scientist there. I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Ottawa in the Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and Immunology. And I'm currently instructing at Carleton University, and maybe also eventually adjunct professor appointment as well. Right, so the overarching theme of what I do is, I guess I would qualify myself as a cellular immunologist, and I work in studying infectious diseases and basically how living with these infectious diseases in a chronic state weakens our immune system, and not only to the current infection, and I focus principally on hepatitis C virus and HIV virus, but how that weakening of your immune system can put you at risk potentially to be weaker to defend yourself against other common pathogens that you might encounter, such as seasonal flu virus or hepatitis B virus or other pathogens that we haven't even looked at yet, where you maybe have a weaker immune system as a result of your chronic viral infection. So I'm looking at trying to understand that weakened immune system. So a typical day for me, I would say 85% of my time is spent writing grants, so appealing to government agencies usually. There are also other non-governmental agencies to get funding so that I can do my research, so that I can buy the reagents to do the bench work, as well as to pay my graduate students and undergraduate students the suggested stipends to support them to do this research. So a lot of my time is spent creating research projects in these areas. At the same time, I'm also mentoring those students on a weekly basis, one-on-one, and in weekly lab meetings as a group. We work on their writing, their oral communication skills and presentations, and we chit-chat to make sure that their scientific philosophies are developing as well as graduate students and undergraduates. So that's about, and I write papers and I think and that sort of thing. But I guess the other 15% of my time is spent teaching and doing some service. So I do a lot of teaching, a lot of teaching at the University of Ottawa and at Carleton at the undergraduate, graduate, and medical school levels. And I do some of this in French as well. And I also enjoy doing university service. So I'm on a variety of committees, like the Equity, Diversity, and Gender Committee at the University of Ottawa and other academic committees. The question of what inspired me to go into biology is a tough one. I think it started probably with my parents, who pushed us a lot on focusing on our academics. That was the #1 priority in our family. I have veterinarians in our family, and I grew up on a farm, so I kind of had this first-hand exposure to health issues, things that alter health, treatments, strategies to deal with devastating health occurrences, and that always sort of fascinated me, and seeing that as a real-life experience probably pushed me into the sciences, at least. The other story about how I ended up as an immunologist kind of gets complicated along the way, but it all starts with a biology degree, really. So trying to name one person who's an inspiration is a bit difficult. I've met a lot of amazing people, so I don't usually narrow it down. And I think actually having a collection of people is probably better to get at what you should really be doing. So like I said, my parents are pretty major. My grandfather was a pretty significant researcher, Dr. John Crawley, who's since passed away, but he did some amazing research in poultry vaccination programs through a company called Connaught, which is now Sanofi Aventis. So he did a lot of work in that area and rabies vaccines, and he was a quintessential scientist, and we spent a lot of time talking about science together. So I think about him a lot. His picture's in my office. A lot of people along the way I've met, university professors, At McGill, Dr. Michael Ratcliffe was an amazing mentor who wrote my letter of reference to get into graduate school. And that just took one conversation to get that. Just an amazing, and his longtime friend that I see at conferences. My PhD supervisor, Dr. Bruce Wilkie, really is ultimately one of the biggest reasons why I've made it so far. An amazing one-on-one mentor and very happy-go-lucky kind of guy as well, but a pretty strong influence on me. And other mentors along the way would be Anne Croy, who was on my committee. She's at Queen's University now. She's a reproductive immunologist, an amazing female scientist to look up to. You'll never find anyone who's more excited about talking about science other than her. So, and my last mentor and ongoing mentor right now is Dr. Jonathan Angel, who was my postdoctoral fellow mentor, and he really helped me explore my interest in human immunology. So I have like this spectrum of people who've influenced me. So how did I get here? I sometimes think about things like what will become of Angela, and I've thought about that a lot in my path, so that's not an uncommon question that students should be faced with. But so I left Guelph and I went to McGill University to do a degree in some sort of biology, thinking I was going to go to medical school, and I quickly changed my mind in about 6 months once I realized that about 95% of the people in school want to become doctors, and in fact I was interested in other things. So rather than go in a concentration in anatomy, I chose microbiology, study things that you can barely see. And I liked working in the lab, in the lab courses, so I decided to pursue that. And it took a while for me to figure out that graduate school was what I wanted to do. And I literally sat in the medical building and wrote a piece of paper that said, "What is to become of Angela?" And I wrote all kinds of things like nursing, or go back to school and get more biology, go and work in industry, but I didn't know what that meant if you only had a bachelor's. And then even a degree in management, just to completely change things. But at the same time, I had applied to graduate schools, and I got into a couple of them, and that's how I met Bruce Wilkie at the University of Guelph, and started my degree in a veterinary college, studying pigs and bee cells. And it was one surprise after another. The project went really well. And I transferred into a PhD, which is fairly common these days in the biomedical sciences, so I didn't have to do a master's. So that was all these bits of encouragement sort of along the way that were helping me. Getting my first paper in the first couple of years, that was huge in helping me stay on this path. But once I finished that, I decided that I wanted something more than veterinary immunology. I wanted to be more mainstream. I wanted to be on a really hot topic. And so that meant moving into human immunology. And so I've ended up at the University of Ottawa, or actually the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute, to do my postdoctoral research in HIV. So I spent a number of years doing that. And then based on my findings there, I grew that into my current interest, which is in hepatitis C. And so I've carved out my own sort of independent niche. I won a salary award, which helped create my position in the institute. That's kind of unconventional in terms of, starting your lab in that way, but that's essentially how I've ended up where I am today. So my advice to you would be to make sure that you take a variety of courses in the biologies, biology, biochemistry, genetics, to get a really good base. You don't want to be overly focused in a given area. So balance yourself out, especially in the biochemistries, because those can be applied to many areas of biomedical research. So you don't need to specialize too early in your undergraduate degree. I would say that you should plan in advance. Take that student calendar and look beyond the year that you're currently in or your next year. Look 2-3 years ahead. And look at classes that you might want to take and plan them. Plan a trajectory. What kind of prerequisites are you going to need to take, and kind of carve out potential options of courses and degrees that you could do, and then you'll make a decision. And the last piece of advice that I could give you, it would be to come and talk to us, because we're not scary, we're normal people, and we actually, you don't realize it maybe, but at the end of a class, we actually want to stay and speak to you for half an hour if you want. So take advantage of having this professor there, not just for the time slot of the class, but outside of class, and talk to us about career options or class options, and we'd be more than happy to help you. Why is what I do important? I think it's important on a lot of levels. I mean, at least from perspective of my research, I think it's hugely important to improve our little knowledge of hepatitis C immunopathogenesis. There's not a lot that we know about how that chronic infection influences our immune system, not only for the defense against that virus, but also for other pathogens. And the current drugs that are available to try and clear this infection may be good for some, while others are failing these drugs, and we need to learn why that's happening. And also, those drugs are not accessible to everyone because they are about $80,000 for a regimen. So I think for those reasons and many others, my research is important. And I think what I do outside of my research with my teaching and my mentoring is hugely important. I feel as a scientist and as an educator that I have a responsibility to be connected in that way with the learners that surround us and those who work in our labs. And so through teaching, I find that very satisfying and has an impact on their future.